I'm convinced that the opportunities and risks generative AI poses for our model of education and research now constitute such a watershed for MIT and for all of higher education. I really want you to think about the weight of that statement for a second. That is a direct quote from Sally Kornbluth, the president of MIT. When one of the absolute most prestigious science and engineering institutions on the planet openly says a new technology is forcing them to completely rethink their entire model of education, well, we should probably all be paying attention.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I am so excited to dive into this with you today because we are unpacking a really fascinating and incredibly timely document from MIT. We're going to take a deep dive into how the absolute upper echelons of higher education are wrestling with the generative AI revolution. We're looking straight at MIT's newly released strategic vision, figuring out exactly how they plan to adapt and thrive in an era where machines can suddenly do things that used to require a graduate degree. It is just a brilliant case study in change management, philosophy, and practical education.
So here is our roadmap for today. We're going to hit 4 main stops. First, this watershed educational moment itself. Second, AI as a superpower and a risk. Third, MIT's actual blueprint for action. And finally, what all this means for the bleeding edge of research. Let's get right into it.
Kicking things off with Section 1, a watershed educational moment. Let's talk about the sheer scale of the disruption that caused all of this.
You know, academia isn't exactly famous for moving at lightning speed, right? It's usually a world of long-term studies and really slow deliberation. But just look at this timeline. In January of 2026, MIT's top leadership formed a special ad hoc committee to address AI. By August, literally just 8 months later, DOME, the final report and strategic vision were out, and they are already implementing new policies by fall 2026. That rapid turnaround highlights this intense institutional urgency. They knew immediately that waiting even a year or two to figure this out simply wasn't an option.
Now, originally when this committee was formed, they were handed a pretty straightforward to-do list. Check out how students and instructors are currently using AI, spot some cool new teaching innovations, and draft a broad policy. Simple enough. But, as the sources show us, something wild happened. While trying to check off these practical tasks, the committee realized they were bumping up against something way deeper. They found themselves having to answer massive existential questions about the very structure and fundamental value of an MIT education in the first place.
Which brings us to Section 2, AI as a superpower and a risk. This is really the philosophical core of it all.
Okay, before you figure out how to use a crazy new tool, you got to remember what you're actually building. And MIT anchored their whole vision right here, on this definition of their essential work. The highest quality residential education of humans, by humans, in support of human flourishing and for the betterment of humankind. I just absolutely love the emphasis here. Despite all the algorithms and the massive tech shifts, their mission is staying fiercely human-centric. Empowering human discovery is still the whole point.
But they know they're walking a major tightrope. Against that human-centric backdrop, MIT looks at AI as this incredible superpower, one that brings extraordinary potential, but also some pretty disturbing risks. It's not just about buying the latest software. It's about figuring out how to squeeze out all those amazing benefits while actively fighting off the harms. It's a massive balancing act. And honestly, they've made it very clear this is not an optional exercise.
So how do you actually pull off that balancing act? You might be thinking, okay, just write a giant rulebook. But no, MIT concluded that the most important work here isn't administrative at all. It's cultural. It's about building shared norms for ethical, wise, and responsible AI use. Keep in mind, MIT basically helped birth artificial intelligence, so they feel a really unique duty here. They want a campus culture where students don't just know how to type a good prompt, but actually understand when to use it effectively, when it's ethical, and crucially, when to just put the AI away completely.
All right, moving on to Section 3, a blueprint for action. Let's get into the practical stuff.
So we've got the high-level philosophy and the cultural goals, but let's ask the million-dollar question. How does a heavyweight institution actually practically adapt right now? What are the tangible steps they are taking to prep their students for a world that's basically changing overnight?
Well, they laid out a really clear 3-step blueprint. Step 1 is creating AI-aware educational processes, basically totally rethinking what students need to learn now and how they learn it. Step 2 is centering people and the residential community. In a world full of AI tutors and digital isolation, MIT is intentionally leaning into human connection and deep in-person community. And Step 3, build processes for continuous iteration. AI is moving way too fast for permanent rules, so their solutions have to be flexible enough to evolve right alongside the tech.
To actually execute that blueprint, they are rolling out some big changes on the ground immediately. First, they're completely reevaluating how they assess learning. Because, hey, if an AI can just write the essay for you, the essay is probably a broken test now. They're also heavily pivoting back to hands-on learning, getting students physically engaged in ways AI just cannot replicate. And finally, every single class now requires an explicit AI use policy. President Kornbluth actually pointed out that this should be a huge relief for students. No more guessing. You'll know exactly when you must, may, or definitely must not use AI in every single subject.
Which leads us to our final section, number 4, accelerating the research frontier. So, while the classroom side is playing a bit of defense, managing risks and updating grades, the research side is a totally different story. It is pure offense. The source material conveys this genuine sense of awe here. AI is dramatically expanding both the scope and the pace of experimental discovery across practically every single research area. It is pushing the boundaries of what is possible, letting them tackle massive problems faster than ever before in human history.
Let's look at exactly what this looks like in practice. MIT researchers are treating AI like an absolute superpower for real-world problem solving. They're using it to spit out promising hypotheses, turning what used to be years of brainstorming into literally maybe days. They're relentlessly pressure testing possible solutions before they ever step foot in a physical lab. And at the institutional level, they're actively building specialized communities to help faculty figure out the most responsible ways to use AI in their own super niche fields. It's just a continuous engine of innovation.
So, let's bring this all together. MIT has given us this incredibly thoughtful, urgent, and really human-centric response to a major technological earthquake. But obviously, this isn't just about one university in Massachusetts, right? This is about the future of how every single one of us learns, works, and discovers. So I want to leave you with this to think about. As these tools become unimaginably powerful, how are you going to navigate this new terrain? How will you make sure you're using AI to boost your own human potential instead of just letting it replace it? Definitely something to chew on. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.